Good morning, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and this isn't a bookish breakfast because it's Friday, but it is breakfast time, so I'm a little bit confused about what's going on here. But what is going on is that I looked at how many videos I wanted to do during Jane Austen July and all of the Jane Austen related topics that I wanted to discuss, and I realised that there wasn't that much time left in July in which to do them. So today I'm here to do a very short review of Where the Rhythm Takes You by Sarah Das. There is a review of this that was done by Claudia at Spencer's Library. I think she posted it like yesterday. I was planning this one already, but I will try not to repeat too much of what Claudia's already said, and I will leave a link to her review in the description. That's the thing. So yeah, Where the Rhythm Takes You is an adaptation of Persuasion. It moves Persuasion to be set in Tobago. The author of this book, Sarah Das, is born in Trinidad but lived in Tobago for many years, and she now lives in London, I believe. Well, she studied in London. It doesn't actually say where she's living now. And yeah, so she's decided to transform the story of Persuasion from kind of an autumnal novel set in Bath and the south coast of England onto this amazing, vibrant, warm, sunny island hotel setting, it's fantastic. It actually works really, really well. So I only heard of this this month because Claudia at Spencer's Library said that it was on her TBR, and I think I was just looking for something really light-hearted and cheerful, and I haven't really got that so far from the other Jane Austen retellings I've read, which have been more set in the Regency era, like The Heiress and The Other Bennet Sister. The Heiress is by Molly Greeley, and The Other Bennet Sister is by Janice Hadlow. Neither of those really gave me what I was looking for, and I wanted something that would be just a really fun read. And if you even look at the cover of this just screams fun read, doesn't it? Like, look at the colourfulness and the liveliness of that cover. And I have to say, like, talking about the physical book, I read them without the dust jackets on. It was really bright yellow and cheerful, and then every chapter heading, like, I know it's really shallow things to like, but it really adds to the holiday vibe, I suppose. Obviously the character in this lives in Tobago and she's not on holiday, but for me it was a holiday read, so it worked out in that way for me. So I'm doing this review on the basis that you probably know the story of Persuasion, but you don't know the story of Where the Rhythm Takes You, or you haven't read this book, because it only came out this year. It came out in 2021, and I was very lucky to be able to find a copy that arrived so quickly in order for me to be able to read it in July. So I'm going to review on the basis of that. So I'm trying not to spoil the changes made for Where the Rhythm Takes You too much while still being able to discuss it. So what I would say about this book is it's really good on being a good fun read. That's the first thing. That's the top criteria that it meets. It's also quite good on the backstory. So in Persuasion, Anne has just lost her mother some years before, and the loss of her mother kind of overshadows everything else that's happened in her life since. But her bereavement for her mother is never really examined, other than it's a factor in the things that make her sad. Where the Rhythm Takes You takes that bereavement of the loss of a parent and goes into a lot more. Talks about the main character, who's called Raina in this, talks about her feelings of guilt, her feelings of responsibility towards her mother, the relationship that she had with her mother, and the kind of love and loss related to that, and how it affects her behaviour going forward. Talks about that a lot more in the context of this being a young adult romance, so it's not like, it talks about it a lot more, but it's never going to be at a huge level of depth, just because it's written as a light summer read for the young adult kind of market. So I don't want to oversell it. I did really enjoy this, and it's also really good talking more about the backstory on the use of flashbacks. So this is something that I really feel that a modern adaptation of Persuasion should be doing. Like, there's a new film of Persuasion that's going to be coming out, I think, later this year or next year. And I really hope to see them using flashbacks to really show the power of Anne and Wentworth's relationship. So Wentworth in this is called, what is he called? Aidan. And the book kind of takes us back to when Aidan and Raina first met, and when Aidan and Raina like first kissed, or when they started to have feelings for each other. And in Persuasion, we just get told that they had this relationship in the past, and we have to trust, from seeing Anne's feelings in the present, we have to trust the intensity of her feelings in the past. And I think that can be something that's quite difficult for people to interpret or difficult to convey to a modern audience. So I think that the little hints that we get in Persuasion, like the moments when Captain Wentworth says things like, oh, doesn't Anne Elliot ever dance anymore? I remember she used to be fond of dancing. Or, oh, I remember you were never much of a card player. Things like that. I think it would be really good to take those little hints and turn them into full scenes, which is essentially what Sarah Dass tries to do in a way. Obviously changing the setting significantly. So those are the things that are really good. The other things that are really good is just the setting, this hotel, like a little bit dilapidated, but very emotionally important to the character. I really cared about her hotel and the changes that were made to her hotel and things going on there. I felt like the transformation of Captain Wentworth into Aidan was believable and realistic. So in the original, Captain Wentworth is obviously a not very well-to-do sailor at the beginning, and then by the end he is a very successful captain who has got a lot of prize money from fighting in the recent wars. In this, Aidan starts out as a kind of very poor character who wants to be a musician, but he's just really trying to earn some money. But rising in popularity as a musician, I think, corresponds very well to rising as a sailor, because you've got that glamour, you've got the sense of respect and renown that comes with the profession. It involves a certain amount of skill, and it also really conveys the ability of a person to rise from absolutely nothing and nowhere to a position of some recognition and esteem, which is what Wentworth gets as a sailor. When he becomes a captain. So I thought that was a very good choice of way to adapt it. And also the way that he came from this little island, it made sense that he hadn't been back and that they hadn't been in contact for all that time. Whereas I think another modern adaptation of Persuasion would struggle to explain why they hadn't written to each other, or why they hadn't, just looked each other up on Facebook and stuff. It does talk a little bit about why she doesn't use social media to follow him. Not very realistically, but yeah. So yeah, I thought that was a good adaptation. Moving on to things that I maybe didn't like so much. It's very much not pretending to be an original work of literature, I suppose. It falls very heavily into the young adult tropes of teenagers who just get electric shocks every time they touch each other. Don't really get that, but like massively overplaying the romantic and not even sexual feelings, but just like the feelings of anxiety and excitement that they get when they're close to each other. There's a massive it's really common in young adult romance, I suppose, that the kind of it took my breath away to see him kind of thing. I don't know that she uses that one, but she definitely uses the electric shock thing quite a few times. And just general teenage angst. I think that's one of the things that Persuasion has in bucket loads that Where the Rhythm Takes You really doesn't have. Is, to me, Persuasion at its heart is a book about maturity and how when you're older you're better able to resolve the problems of your youth and to reflect and make a measured decision about what you should be doing and how you should be acting, I suppose. Where the Rhythm Takes You, the characters start out aged around 15, I think, and end up aged around 18, so there's just not that real development. Like, they are older, they are a bit more mature, but they're still not really mature. So it doesn't feel like a kind of a solid foundation for a long-term relationship at the end, because the characters are still kind of teenage and angsty. But yeah, it was good. It was, I felt that they felt for each other, but in the longer term, I still think that they need to mature as people quite significantly, whereas Anne and Wentworth have definitely done all of that in their life up to the point when they meet again. In terms of writing style, the other thing that I wanted to comment on, I suppose, and I think Claudia mentioned this as well, is there are a lot of characters in this book, and some of the characters I think are just kind of a residue from translating it from Persuasion. So characters like Raina's sister, for instance. She kind of feels like she's there because Anne Elliot in the book had a sister rather than because she really needed there to be a sister. So there's characters that don't really serve much of a purpose. There's also quite a lot of characters who are there just to set up a specific scene or deliver a specific piece of information, and other than that, they might as well not be there. So I kind of feel like the author could have found different ways to do that rather than create extra characters, extra members of the band, extra people that they meet along the way. I kind of felt like the characters there was a character who was seen to be quite like maybe like a surrogate mother type figure, which I thought was kind of standing for Lady Russell, but then she kind of disappeared for the majority of the book and then popped up at the end to hand over some sweeties. Like, there wasn't the characters that weren't Raina and Aidan and maybe one or two others weren't really developed, I suppose. Which, it's not really the kind of book that you go to for a lot of character development, but cutting down the character numbers by about 5 would have allowed the characters that were in there to have a little bit more space to grow. The other thing that also on the topic of characterization, there were some characters who had storylines and had development, but those storylines were just dropped at the end of the book when the romantic storyline was ended. So because the end of the book focuses more and more on Raina and Aidan, we lose some of the characters that were built up along the way and some of the storylines that were built up along the way as being like important or as being like points of significant tension. There is one character in particular who experiences some very unpleasant things posted about her online, and she is very emotionally affected by that, but then it just disappears and there's no conclusion to that really that was satisfying to the feelings that she would have been having. She just kind of goes and we don't know what happens to her. And, at one point in the book I was very worried that she was going to hurt herself, but she just disappeared, so who knows. Then going on to one other thing that I think for me was really crucial in terms of adapting this book from Persuasion. The most significant scene in Persuasion to me is on the Cobbett line, and the severity of that incident is the real test of character and the real test of that maturity that I was talking about, and it really shows it really shows that Anne is the person that Wentworth has to be with. It really shows her strength as a person and her resilience and her ability to deal with things. It really proves her. And it adds a lot of weight to the book. The fact that somebody nearly dies makes the book a lot more serious than some of the other books that Jane Austen wrote. A lot of them do have, I'm thinking of Marianne now getting really ill. Jane got a little bit ill in Pride and Prejudice, but like this kind of really earth-shattering moment, and that is completely lost in this adaptation. The person who is hurt becomes Raina instead of being one of the other people, and the injury is so minor it kind of scarcely bears mentioning, and it's just used as an excuse to get the two romantic characters close together without there being any kind of real development around that, which is what the scene is so crucial for in Persuasion. And in Persuasion, it's the real turning point of Wentworth realising his feelings and what he wants to do. Whereas in Where the Rhythm Takes You, I think that Aidan has realised what his feelings are sometime before it, and he just takes a lot of time to get to the point, really. And they just don't really talk about it, whereas they don't have a reason not to talk about it. So yeah, I don't know. As an adaptation of Persuasion, it was lacking. As a very fun summer read that I enjoyed and read in about a day and a half, I would highly recommend it. If you are disappointed by a lot of Jane Austen adaptations, by a lot of Jane Austen retellings, then I would say go for this and just don't take it too seriously, because it was just fun. Anyway, that was a lot longer than I thought I would be talking about this. Thank you very much for watching. 2 videos in a week, this is crazy. I will try to return for more Jane Austen related content before July is over. Take care everyone, and yeah, happy Jane Austen reading.